Saludos. So today I thought we would go over the pronombres personales, the personal pronouns. Um, I was about to make a video on the verbs, and I thought, well, maybe I should teach the pronouns first so that you know what we're talking about. So here's the basic list of subject pronouns. They're pretty straightforward, but some things to watch out for here and there. So of course we have yo, only form of yo. There's no feminine. The plural of yo is not yo. The plural of yo is nosotros. Just like in English, the plural of I is not I's, it's we. Ladies, if you're ever part of an all-female group and you want to say we, it becomes nosotras. I sometimes forget that one because when I join a group, it ceases to be all-female. But yo, nosotros. Tú is the singular second person, you or thou, it's singular. And then it begins to get complicated. There's also vos, which is used in some countries and is singular. Some but not all, and is usually not considered correct. Originally, I was going to have a strike through it, and then I thought, no, it's harder to read that way. So, and then there's vosotros, or if it's an all-female group, vosotras. Only really used in Spain, and is used for a group of people that you would individually call tú. So that's why I translate it as you or y'all, because, you know, I'm Southern, so y'all. Usted is also you. The difference between usted and tú is familiar. Usted is formal. Ustedes is the plural of that. So it's a plural for a group of people that you would call usted individually, or a mixed group of usted and tú. Or honestly, in most countries, a group of people that you would individually call tú, you would just call them ustedes. It's the normal form we use for y'all. Él is he, ella is she, and the plural of those, ellos, they, ellas, they. Ellas, of course, is only if it's an all-female group, a group of just women, women and girls, something like that. There's a guy in there, even just one bad apple, he makes the whole group ellos. So you may not use that one as much, and in fact, you're not going to use most of these most of the time because in an average sentence, you know from your verb form who the subject is. You don't need to put the pronoun, but you will need to know what they are, because occasionally you'll have to have them in as the object of a preposition, a little word like de, from, or a, to, or con, with, or para, for, through, por, something like that. So that most of them are what you would expect. De nosotros, de vosotros, de ustedes, de ellos. They're pretty self-explanatory except for yo becomes me. Notice the accent mark. And tú becomes ti. De él does not contract. They stay separate words. That accent mark means it is not the word the, so it doesn't contract with the de. Con has to go and be the weirdo. So if you're saying with me or with you, that'll be conmigo, contigo, but con usted, con él, con ella, con nosotros, con vosotros, con ustedes, con ellos, con ellas. They're all pretty straightforward except for watch out for conmigo, contigo, and a mí, a ti, de mí, de ti, para mí, para ti, por mí, por ti. Any other preposition you can think of, those two are going to be the weirdos in that group. All of the others are going to keep their subject forms. You just put the preposition in front to the left. We're not going to talk about like lo and le and la and me and te today. We'll leave that for another time. And if you're just interested in, okay, ¿cómo se habla ahora? So, okay, these are the pronouns. Vosotros, vosotras only in Spain. Vos used very heavily in Argentina, Uruguay, but also throughout the other mainland Latin American countries. Not so much in Mexico, but you'll catch it in places like Nicaragua, Costa Rica. My former boss from Ecuador said that some people in a certain social strata in Ecuador used to use it. It's dying out in some places because they don't use it in Mexican television. So like in a lot of Central America, it's apparently becoming less and less common, the vos. As in Mexican television, they use tú. One question to watch out for is tú o usted. Which one do I use and how do I know? So this is going to vary a lot by culture, by country, and also by age group. If you are talking to someone from the islands, Cuba, Puerto Rico, we tend to be muy tuteones. We tend to go straight to tú. Spaniards as well. One of my first days at university, I sat down next to a little Spaniard, and I said, "Oh, ¿cómo se llama usted?" And she looked at me like I just spit at her, and she said, "No me digas usted. No soy tan viejita. Don't call me usted. I'm not as old as all that." So yeah, tú for a lot of people will be the default. If you don't know, start off with usted, and people will correct you. Sort of rule of thumb I usually give people is if it's somebody that you would call by his or her their first name, use tú. If it's somebody that you would call by their last name, Mr. or Ms. so-and-so, then use usted. You know, if it's someone you would deliberately avoid using the first name, you would just instead substitute sir or ma'am, probably use usted. Most of the time, family members will be tú, children will be tú. If you're talking to animals in Spanish, tú, for each animal. And when praying, it's tú. Praying to, God or even to a saint, tú. So they're both rude and they're both polite. It depends on how you use them. Some people, if you suddenly start using usted, they'll say, "What do I smell? You don't like me anymore? You don't want to be my friend?" Fine. Others, if you use tú, they'll say, "Who are you? I don't know you. Why are you being so familiar with me?" Much like in English, when some weirdo comes up to me and calls me by my first name, well, first I'm confused. How do you know me? But then second, I'm like, how dare you? You don't know me. Don't call me by my first name. We haven't been introduced. So it's going to vary a little bit. Mexico, Ecuador, especially with older people, you're more likely to use usted. Spain, the islands, a lot of younger people across the Spanish-speaking world more likely to use tú, but results will vary. So take your cues from them, and if you're not sure, start off with the default of usted. The plural, if you want to say you guys, y'all, always going to be ustedes, unless you're in Spain, and then vosotros will come into play. Now you can stop here, and if you're wondering how did we end up with 5 different ways of saying you, okay, I'll tell you. So these are what the pronouns used to be. Nice, simple, practical, sane, I and we, thou and you, he and they, she, and another form of they. So pretty straightforward. But as happened in English, when we started to not use thou as much, as happened in French, the plural form for you started to become an extra polite, an honorific form of thou. So they started making vos both plural and singular. And at some point, that became not polite enough. So they started building on to it. It wasn't just, thou and you anymore. Then it became thou and you and your grace, vuestra merced. And of course, if you're talking to, the Duke and his wife, then you have to make that plural. So it's vuestras mercedes, your graces. How are your graces this morning? How is your grace today? So eventually those got contracted because vuestra merced is kind of a long thing to say, especially if you're not actually talking to a duke. And it became usted, which is sometimes abbreviated UD or VD. It's not venereal disease in Spanish, it's usted, vuestra merced. and vuestras mercedes became ustedes. Again, UDS or VDS, because of course in Latin the U and the V are the same thing. So you'll see, just like in old engravings and in old texts, you'll see the V standing in for the U. It got contracted. So, and then at some point, these two words, nos wasn't just good enough to be we, so they started saying the rest of us, nosotros, us others, we others. And so it became a singular word, nosotros. And since otros is an adjective, has masculine and feminine forms, nosotras is also possible. And vosotros, I guess to differentiate it from vos, became you others, you people, the rest of you guys. So vosotros. It's a whole big nasty mess. Now no one uses nos as a subject pronoun. Vos is used as a subject pronoun in Argentina, Uruguay, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, but it's never plural anymore. At least not as far as I know. It's always singular. It's just an alternative to tu. In countries where you use tu, you will not use vos. In countries where you use vos, you will not use tu. When I say countries, maybe I should say regions, cities, neighborhoods, because some places you'll find people that use tu. If I go to Argentina, I'm going to continue using tu. Everyone will understand me. It will be fine. But when we're going over the verbs, I will point out the vos forms, just so that you're aware of them, por si acaso, just in case. So this is the hot mess that is the subject pronouns in Spanish. We don't have a version for Z, so if you're talking about a hypothetical person, what we usually do is just leave the pronoun out because you can use the verbs by themselves. But we don't have a Z in Spanish, at least not yet. We also don't have a subject pronoun for it. So if you point at the tree and say, oh, it's growing, you just say growing, crece, it grows, crece. It's big. You don't say the it. You just say, oh, es grande. Es grande. You don't need the subject pronouns for any of these. But you need to know them in case perhaps you need to clarify, are you talking about this person or about usted? Sometimes you'll want to clarify, but more importantly, you'll sometimes need to use them with prepositions. So for that reason, you have to know them. But most of the time, we'll leave them out of sentences. But be aware of them. Of course, memorize them. Pues, hasta luego. Chao. Que la pasen bien.